Hello everyone, Andy Raffel from etechnics.com, and today we're looking at the Silverstone Kublai, not quite sure how to pronounce it, but the KL04. Now the KL04, or the Kublai, however it's pronounced, is aimed at the sort of consumer who requires a lot of storage options. Now this could be anyone who obviously has all their movies, music and things like that, or if they have a lot of photos, or people who do CAD work, computer aided design, and have very large files, video rendering, that kind of thing, where storage is a key thing to actually have. Now you've pretty much got two options when it comes to that. Your first option is going to of course be a NAS box, a NAS server of some type, whether it be a QNAP, Thecus, Buffalo. There's many other brands out there who would cater for that. Now obviously you can go down that route, and it's a matter of buying a lot of hard drives, depending on whether you buy 2 bay, 4 bay, 8, or whether you really sort of go into the enterprise server market and buy something absolutely astronomical. But you're looking at quite high prices, obviously the hard drives themselves, and then the actual NAS box, which you will be looking at for a fairly decent sort of 4 bay NAS box from QNAP or Thecus. You're going to be looking at sort of £350–400 in America, well over $500, and that can be obviously quite expensive. Now if you've already got the drives, or you've got a few drives and you want that facility to upgrade further, then you may just want to build it into your own system like we've got here. Now what we've actually got here is the KL04. We've got a system built into it at the moment which is comprising of an Asus Z68 motherboard, Accelero Extreme based 7970 AMD, but with the Arctic cooler on there, Corsair HX 1050 watt power supply, a 2700K hooked up to an Antec Cooler 920, 16 gig of Kingston 2133 HyperX memory. We've also got a Kingston HyperX SSD down here in the 2.5 inch drive cage, optical drive, and then at the moment we've just got one hard drive in there just to sort of simulate one of the locations that you can actually install a drive. Now the reason that this case is aimed at people who want to obviously have mass amounts of storage options is because of the facility that it's actually got, where you can install a lot of drives into it. Now obviously starting from the top, we have got sort of bays for optical drive bays, so we've got 4 bays for that. You've also got this sort of SSD cage or 2.5 inch cage down here, which you can fit quite a few 2.5 inch drives into there, so we've got one in there at the moment. Then we've got this lovely cage here as well. Now if I actually just turn the system off, we can sort of show you just by disconnecting the mechanical hard drive. This would all be screwed in, but for now we've left it unscrewed so we can just take it out. Now it comes with this cage. Now this cage has got the facility to have 9 3.5 inch hard drives in there, and this is going to be perfect for people who need that extra storage space, because a lot of cases don't cater for this amount of hard drives. You'd generally be lucky sort of 4, maybe 5, but this caters for a lot more, obviously, especially when you sort of group it with the 2.5 inch bay down here, because if you imagine just having sort of something half this size, you've got enough room for your SSD, maybe 4 hard drives at a push. Whereas this, 9 hard drives in there, and then you've got the choice of having 6 in total on here, and that's with, if we have a look, 1, 2, 3, yeah, 5 on the inside, and then you can actually bolt one to the top by the looks of it as well. And that's just a matter of taking this 2.5 inch cage out, which comes out from the bottom, and sort of going from there. So lots of facility for people who need that extra storage space. So what we're actually going to do is take you on a sort of full look around this case, starting with the exterior, what sort of options it's got for ventilation, what features it's got from the outside, and then what we do is we'll zoom in a little bit on the inside and show you exactly how far things can be pushed in terms of storage, what sort of components you can fit in there, which straight away you can see we've got a 7970 in there, which is quite a long graphics card, but it manages to fit in fine. And if you actually remove this cage and had your hard drives in other locations, then you can actually fit a larger graphics card which can fill the whole of the case basically. So plenty of option there for sort of any type of user, I'd say. So enough of me rambling on. We'll have a look at the exterior of the case, take a look inside in a little bit more detail, and then we'll come back and tell you exactly what our thoughts are on the Silverstone KL04. Okay, boys and girls, I want to start off with the top of the case to start with. At the front we can see, well towards the front, we can see that there is this sort of cut-out panel which has got your front panel connectors on it. Now there isn't a mass amount of connectors, but there should be enough that should be sufficient for the average user. So we've got headphone and microphone 3.5mm jack plugs in the middle, and we've also got two USB 3.0 connectors as well. Now the thing I like about this case is the fact that they do bundle in a USB 3.0 native to USB 2.0 native adapter. So that means that you haven't got to traipse the cable for the USB 3.0 out the back of the case or anything like that if your motherboard doesn't permit a USB or support a USB 3.0 native header. So there's a nice little inclusion there from Silverstone. Towards the rear of the case, just behind, you will see that there's this plastic sort of fan grille, and this just does pop out quite easily. It's plastic, and it has got a very, very small, should I say very, very thin dust protector, but it's sufficient. The only problem with the dust protector is it isn't removable, so it is sort of glued down and stuck into place. So hopefully it should catch dust all on this side and you won't get it in between the dust filter and the other side. There is ventilation holes all the way along here as well, and once removed it does show the actual space that we've got available for fans. So it does come included with a 120mm fan just here, and behind it there is space for another either 120mm or 140mm. In terms of radiators and things like that, you should be able to fit a 240mm rad in here, but things might be quite tight, and we'll show you exactly why when we open things up. But if you wanted to install fans here, this is how you'd actually go about doing it. You'd have to take this whole plastic cover off to reveal what we've got here, and we can screw it in from this side. But no real biggie. Putting it back on, it is just a matter of sort of getting all of the latches into place and clipping it back down, nice and simple. If we move towards the front of the case and just pan the camcorder down, you can see that I'm just going to move things away ever so slightly so we can get some focus on this. But you can see that we've got four 5¼ inch drive bays. Now to get these out, it is just a matter of reaching from the inside to get the latches, because you can sort of do it from here, but it's a little bit fiddly. Once you get one side off, you can't really get the other side off too easily. But they are fairly easy to remove, but as you can see they have got these sort of spring-loaded latches just to obviously make things a lot easier. Now we normally put our optical drive in the top, but we did have restrictions with our power supply cables because we only wanted to use one SATA power connector, and because of that we've obviously got our optical drive, we've got a storage drive down just below it, and then we've also got a 2.5 inch SSD, and using one cable was quite restrictive, so we had to move things about. Now this isn't a fault of Silverstone's, it's more a fault with our power supply. So what I'd say is if you are looking to get this case, just make sure that your power supply has got sufficient length on the cables. So as we do move slightly further down, you can see that our optical drive bay is here, just sort of resting inward slightly, and I've got to be honest, I'm not a big fan of it. It just looks a bit out of place. I would have preferred some kind of a bracket to make this flush and then for the drive to be brought out a little bit. Now they do actually supply you with a bracket of variety, but it's not the sort of bracket that we'd actually want for an optical drive bay. Now if I actually get this bracket and show you, you can see that it is for converting a 5¼ inch to 3.5 inch. Now what I would have personally liked to have seen is something that goes onto here and has a space cut out for your optical drive bay. So even if it's just filling in these little gaps on the side to make the whole thing flush, I think that would have been a lot better received from myself and possibly other users as well. Now what I'm just going to do here is I'm going to plug the case in so you can see any sort of LED effects that we've got from this case. So we built the computer up and everything inside this chassis, and if we just pan down a little bit further we can see there's a Silverstone logo at the bottom. Other than that, the front of it is all very, very simple. We've got our power button and reset buttons just here, so if I just zoom into that so you can see what happens when we turn it on. So here's our power and reset. So if I turn the power on, obviously switching it on from the back first, like a numpty, you can see that it does glow with a sort of blue glow, and we've got our power and reset buttons both on here. And that's pretty much the only LED lighting effects that this case has actually got. So turning things back off, you can see it looks very, very simple. So what we're going to do now is we're going to flip the case around so you can see it from the back, and then we'll look at some of the other features of the exterior, including the side panels, and then we'll open it up and give you a first look into the inside of the KL04 from Silverstone. Okay, so we've turned the case around, and the first thing you'll notice is there is two spaces here with metal panels in there for passing water cooling tubes through, or if you did decide to get an adapter of your own to plug into USB 3.0, if you did want that functionality instead of converting it down to USB 2.0, you could always pass a cable through here, but it's going to obviously tamper with cable management and things like that and may not look the tidiest inside the case. Other than that, if we pan down a little bit, we can see that there is space here for a 120mm fan. We've actually exchanged that out. Now, the fan that comes included is a quiet Silverstone 1200 RPM 120mm fan, and that's connected via a 3-pin connector. Now, we've taken this out for a very, very good reason. We, in all of our case reviews, we use the Antec Cooler 920. So we've actually got our 120mm exhaust fan here, then the radiator, then another 120mm fan in a push-pull configuration. And we'll show you exactly what sort of room you've got when we open things up and you can see inside. Other than that, very, very simple rear I/O. And as we move down, we can see there's ventilation holes all the way down the sides. And then as we go towards the bottom, you can see there's a lot more ventilation holes here. There's this little panel just here which allows you to protect your expansion bays to a certain degree. So it's a matter of unscrewing here and also down the bottom, and once you've done so, you can actually gain access to the expansion slots for installing graphics cards and other expansion type cards. And obviously this involves taking this off, doing that, opening it up and installing your cards as you would. You can see that we've got a 7970 in here on the second and third bays, but all of the other expansion bays are completely ventilated, which is obviously fantastic for cooling and things like that, and is going to help exhaust any heat out of the rear of the case. You can see our power supply is located down the bottom as it should be, and all blends in very, very nicely. There are thumb screws to take off the side panels, and these are black, opposed to other manufacturers who decide to give these really nice looking cases with silver thumb screws. It just doesn't really work. But Silverstone have thought a little bit about it, and obviously it's not a huge cost factor, and they have given you black thumb screws. So if we just turn things around on the side, we can see that if I pan out a little bit and move the camcorder back, you can see that on this side it is completely solid. So we've got a solid side panel on this side. You can actually get a windowed version which will just have a sort of cutout window here with perspex, and if you're doing water cooling and that kind of thing with a loop system, then you're going to get a really, really nice look to it. Moving the case around the other way to the other side, we can see that things are slightly different on this side. Now everything is completely metal apart from this little panel over here. So if I just zoom in over there, we can show you exactly what this panel is all about. Now, much like the top, it's just a sort of plastic panel that removes. A little bit stiffer, this one, but it should get better with time. And then you can see that it's got this dust filter on there again, which is once again glued down. So hopefully that will protect all dust from escaping from the case, and you can just take this off once in a while and just wipe it over. Now that we've actually removed that, you will see that we've got a very, very similar design to what we saw on the top of the case, and it's just got these ventilation holes, and it has got a fan pre-installed. Now there is room for another fan as well on the side just below, and this will help with your heating properties and cooling properties of your hard drive bay, because behind this fan and this whole panel is where all your storage drives will be. So lots of room there for extra functionality when it comes to that. Now just turning the case over onto the rear, onto its side, so we can check out the feet and any other unique features that it's got there. You can see that we've actually got two dust filters, but before we look at that, you can see that it has got these sort of they're not quite plastic, but they're not quite rubber. They're like a softer plastic, so it should help with anti-vibration and also give that little bit of clearance between the dust filters so that any hot air and things like that can actually escape. Now we've got two dust filters down here, one as you can see, is a little bit stiff, and once you've actually removed it, you can see that it creates a few little marks on the dust filter. But once you've removed that, it does allow you to unscrew these 4 screws here and take out the 2.5 inch SSD drive cage. Installing things back in, you can see, is quite stiff, but it does the job. And then where the power supply is, you can see that we've got another dust filter there. Once again, very, very stiff, and you can see just along here that it has sort of grated some of the filter. But once again, very, very thin dust filter, and you can see our power supply fan just pushing down there. Installing it back in, you can see that once again, very, very stiff and hard to actually put in. And here's the proof of the pudding. If we show you that, that's actually part of the plastic that's been grated off. So it doesn't seem like they've designed it fantastically when it comes to the dust filters. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take the side off this case. We'll give you a view of the inside from both sides so you can see cable management, as well as how much space and the installation that we've actually done inside this case. Now what I thought I'd actually show you is we're taking the thumb screws out, and you can see the side panel sort of flicks out of the back a little bit. And it's not like most side panels that have got the sort of clips going along that slot in and then slot forward. Instead, it just sort of pulls away like so and then comes off. Now the side panels, very, very rigid, and no sort of real major flex in it or anything at all. And you can see exactly where it sort of lips onto the front of the case, just over here on this sort of rounded panel. Now taking a look inside, you can see all of the components that we've put in. And what you may notice from the offset is that things are quite cramped. At least in our opinion, they are quite cramped. So we've got our Asus P8Z68 VLX in there, which is just a basic sort of budget to mainstream board. We've got 4 memory sticks of Kingston HyperX 2133. We've got the AMD Radeon 7970 with an Accelero Extreme cooler from Arctic Cooling, or Arctic. And we've also got our Antec 920 cooler on there as well. Now the first thing that you will notice, like I say, in my opinion, everything is quite cramped. There's not a lot of room. Now I want to focus on the cooler to start with. With the way that air cooling is going and the fact that water cooling is becoming a lot cheaper, we found that a lot more people are going for these closed loop systems like this, the H50, H80, H100, depending on obviously if your case permits having a dual rad. But yeah, it seems to be the way that things are going. But as you can see, straight away we have got a little bit of obstruction with the fact that this comes out sort of about a quarter of the way over the actual CPU block. Now if you're using an X79 system and you've got memory under here, it may lead to some problems if you wanted to use memory with taller heat spreaders on it. For us it's not too bad, but it is still quite restricted compared to other mid-tower cases that we've used when we compare the Silverstone KL04 to them. Other than that, not too bad sort of up this area. Where we had to put our optical drive bay down here, things are looking a little bit cramped in terms of cables, because we wanted to use one cable and one cable only. And because of that, we're using one SATA power cable, which comes from the power supply out, goes into our SSD down the bottom, which doesn't look too bad, but because our SSD's here and our optical drive is here, we tried to find the prime location to still utilise just using one cable to save on cable management. And because of that, we had to put it in pretty much bang on where the graphics card ends. Now the 7970 is sort of your worst case scenario. It is quite a long card, and you can actually use longer cards if need be by removing this whole cage and fitting the hard drive possibly up into your optical drive bay or somewhere else. Now because of that, we have had some problems, as you can see, with the cable management, but this isn't a major problem. It just really requires the user to use their mind a little bit and sort of see which angle they want to go down, and if they don't mind using 2 cables and just getting a little bit extra mess. So the cage down the bottom is quite a nice novel little idea, but you are quite restricted if you want to use a longer power supply like the Antec Quattros, the Thermaltake Tough Powers, or even some of the other Corsair ones that are on the market. Because of that, obviously they come out further and you're going to have to remove this whole cage instead. So there are some problems with that. In terms of toolless design, we have got these toolless sort of operated optical drive bay locking mechanisms, which are nice, but they do feel quite stiff. in terms of installing SSDs and mechanical hard drives, sadly it's not a toolless operation, and you are going to have to require to use screws that come supplied and a screwdriver. Now this whole cage here actually removes, and I'll see if we can just take the SATA power out, take the SATA data out, and then this whole panel removes out, and is normally locked into place using a couple of screws, but you can see that the whole cage can come out and you can actually slot all of your drives into here. Now you will notice that it has got a sort of foam-like material on there just to protect the drive a little bit. But once removed, and it's quite novel that it's got a little handle which flicks down as well. But once removed, it does give you sort of easier access to other parts of the chassis, so you can see what sort of space you'd have for extra fans, or if you was doing water cooling and you may have a rad somewhere in the case, then you've got room over here for your reservoir and pump and that kind of thing. So a novel little idea from Silverstone there, and that's probably one of the highlights of this case. Now that's all I can show you really on this side of the case, so what I'm going to do now is just turn the case around a little bit so we can see the cable management. I mean, cable management on this case it's not bad, not the best that we've ever seen, but not the worst. But if we unscrew this whole side panel using the thumb screws that come included, once again you can see the back of the case slightly flicks out, and it's just a matter of levering out and pulling. Now this is one of my favourite features of this case, the cable management. I'm just going to sort of pan down a little bit. So what you can actually see down here is the way that the motherboard tray is actually manufactured. They've given this sort of indent to a certain degree. So things like the adapter to the USB 2 from the USB 3 can sit down there nice and comfortably. Your big thick ATX 24 pin power connector can sit down there nicely and be tucked away. We're using one sort of cheapy cable tie, but they do include some proper full-on cable ties as well. But you can see that that's all nicely sort of tucked away just down here, and it's nice because the power supply is located just down here. There's these sort of spaces just between where you can tuck all your power supply cables, because they are the chunkiest, and with your PCI Express, your 24 pin, your 8 pin, which our 8 pin does reach all the way to the ATX connector, which a lot of cases don't permit you to do, and you have got these sort of panels here with the cutout for the CPU backplate as well. So there are lots of cable management holes all throughout the case, and some really nice design work there. A lot of people will ask why there's no rubber grommets and things like that, but Silverstone have never really done the whole rubber grommet idea. So and it seems to work. So why would you add something that other manufacturers are doing and in the end just really sort of copy them? It's not Silverstone. It's not what they do. So that's pretty much a view of how things look with a very quick cable tidying attempt. Obviously, if this was your case and you wanted to make things even prettier, you may decide to run this cable slightly differently through here, these cables slightly differently through there, and you may have a different route of how you want to do it. And obviously that is all dependent on your motherboard and the other components that you're using as well. So that's the view of the Silverstone KL04 interior, and obviously the build that we did with it. So what we're going to do is we're going to stop filming for now. I'm going to get myself into position and everything, and I'll just give you my thoughts on the KL04. Obviously I've expressed a few of my dislikes, a few of the likes that I do actually think this case has got going for it, but just really a very short summary of what I think of the Silverstone KL04, a case really that is aimed at storage enthusiasts and people who need that extra storage space. So we've had a look at the exterior, the interior, and all of the different options on this case, but there are a few things that I really want to sort of summarise on that I like on this case, and a few things that I really don't. Now, not quite sure where to start, but I'd probably say at the front. Now, I'm just not a big fan on the styling. It looks good, admittedly a little bit bulky, but that's the sort of design that they wanted to go for. I guess it's all to do with, if you're going to be using mass amounts of hard drives, then hard drives are quite robust when you think about it. They're big, heavy weighted bits of metal with spinning discs inside. So maybe they've gone for the sort of design of, let's make the outside look robust and sturdy. And it works, and some people, will like it, but there's certain aspects of it that I really don't like, and it's got to be this, where the optical drive bay goes. Now, I would have much preferred it if I just loosen this off, I would have much preferred it if this drive actually came out and sat flush with the rest of it, and then had a plastic insert on either side to go on there. And I think that would have been much better received, at least from myself, because things would have been a little bit more flush, and I don't know, just when it sits back like that, it looks wrong. It really doesn't look right, in my opinion. You guys may agree, you might not agree, but in my opinion, it just doesn't work. The other things that I'm not too keen on when it comes to the exterior is, I'm not a big fan of these sort of plastic panels, which on this side is a little bit stiff, and the fact that you can't actually remove the dust filter off there, it's glued in, so if any dust does manage to sort of get through the dust filter, all you can really do is blow it sort of from this side, and you shouldn't really have to do that. Even getting things back on, it's a little bit sort of clunky and a little bit forceful to just get things back into place, which I'm really not a big fan of. It's the same on the top, exactly the same on the top with that, but I understand why they've done it. It is to, you know, give that extra sort of ventilation and things like that, which admittedly, if you're going to be running 9 hard drives in a case, then yeah, you are going to need the ventilation. But to me, it just doesn't justify why it needs to look so bad. It's just not the nicest looking ventilation sort of slats or anything like that. Now, inside I was pleasantly surprised by how much room there was for graphics cards. Admittedly, when you take out the hard drive cage, you can fit a lot larger graphics cards in there, so you're not really going to have any restrictions with that. I do have a few issues with space on the other aspects of the case. Now, the first is the power supply. If you are buying this case and you've got a mass amount of hard drives and SSDs and things like that, you're going to be wanting to utilise the whole of this drive cage here, and you know, maybe a couple out of here as well. And if you do utilise this, you've got 2 options really. One of them is a good idea, the other one not so good. Now, the first idea is quite good because you can actually bolt this into the side of this cage, which is good because it gets rid of a little bit of room here so you can have a larger power supply. But on the same hand, it does restrict you because you're not going to be able to fit as many hard drives into here as you wanted. So if you bought this specifically saying I've got 9 hard drives and 3 SSDs, sorry, but it's just not going to work. Because if you are buying mass amounts of hard drives, obviously they're going to utilise a lot more power, and you may find, depending on the rest of the components in your system, you may need a larger power supply. Now, I'm not talking larger in terms of watts, I'm talking larger just as in general dimensions and size. Generally, the higher the wattage you get, the larger the power supply gets in terms of dimensions. And things like the Antec Quattros, and there's some other ones from Corsair with the AX1200, the Thermaltake Tough Power, they're going to come out to about here. That's right in the way of that cage that's there. So you are going to have some issues there. The other issue I've got in terms of space is a lot of people these days are going for water cooling, whether it's a closed loop like we've got here with the Antec Cooler 920, or whether it is a custom loop system from XSPC, Coolants, Phobia, whoever. And with that, I think you're going to be quite restricted. Straight away you can see with our Antec 920, that it actually covers over sort of a quarter of the CPU block. Now, if you're using an X79 based system, you may have some issues there because you're going to have memory slots on this side of the socket as well as on this side. Now, it's not going to be so much of a problem if you're using low heat spreaders on your memory, but if you've gone for Corsair Vengeance or some of the G-Skill stuff with higher heat spreaders, you're going to have a problem because that's going to get in the way. And that's one of my main gripes as well, really. Hopefully they may address this after they see this video and read our review, and maybe go back to the drawing board when they make the KL05, I don't know. But I do hear that the TJ04, I believe it is exactly the same because it's got the same internals, just a bit different styling on the outside, and admittedly the styling's a little bit better. There is a downside to the exterior of this case. The side panel that we got didn't actually come with a window, but you can get a window, so they do give you that facility, which is nice. Now, looking at the back, no real sort of major gripes here. I like the way that everything's ventilated. That's always a plus because, especially if you're running lots of mechanical hard drive, you are going to need a lot of space in terms of ventilation. One thing I didn't like was down below where the dust filters are. Just removing the dust filters, if we remove the back one, I don't know if the camera picked up that noise, but it just seems to shred bits of the plastic and the the filter and stuff like that away. And that's because, I'll see if I can actually zoom in on this so you can get a proper look at it, but you can see just along there that, see that little bit of plastic? It's just basically torn this to pieces every time you put it in and out. Now, there you go, there's some more of the plastic that's shredded off of here. I mean, it's not a major problem because I can't see many people removing this and installing it every 5 seconds, but it is still a bit of an issue. And it's really down to the actual manufacturing process that even trying to push it back in is a little bit difficult. You've got to sort of lever it, and there we go, we got it back in. But yeah, you're not going to be removing it and installing it every 5 seconds, but it's still down to the manufacturing process that they've just made things not as fluid as it should be. And that's an issue. Other than that, the case is good. I'm going to take off the other side panel again quickly so I can comment on the sort of cable management side of things, because that I was quite pleasantly surprised about. The fact that with the motherboard tray, it sort of comes down and then it goes out and back down again. And because of that, it's quite handy for cable management, hiding some of them big chunky wires like the power supply ATX 24 pin and things like that. Now, looking at this side, obviously we've already spoke about the internals, but you can see from this side that little things like the USB 3.0 to 2.0 native header adapter is a godsend. A lot of case manufacturers miss out on a trick with that, but it's good that they've included it along. But this space that we've got down here, there's a good sort of almost an inch space underneath the motherboard tray that sort of indents in and just gives you all this extra room down the bottom so that you can tuck these wires nice and snugly down here, and that just enables you to get the best ventilation and to obviously make things look neat and tidy from the other side, especially if you buy this case with a window, because that's going to give you you know, a nicer look when people are looking at the inside of your case. And that's what it's all about these days. There's a lot of people sort of stepping onto the modding scene and things like that, and that's always good. I do like the fact that it's got quite a few holes throughout the motherboard tray. We've got one up here, one there, there, another one there, a big load there, and also if you don't utilise this other fan space, then you have got room down there as well. So that's always nice as well. There probably is a little bit of room if you wanted to go down a custom loop water cooling system route, but I still think you're going to be quite restricted in terms of space as to where you're going to put it, because at the top I just don't think there's enough room at the top to put a rad without it overlapping the motherboard. Depending on your motherboard, that could cause some problems. And here it's going to have to be a very, very slim radiator to go just here, 240mm, but I just don't think there's going to be one slim enough to fit in there. I may be wrong, and you guys might be able to sort of advise me on that. I haven't really dabbled too much in water cooling, but I can't see there being massive amounts of room here for that. But if there is, then well done on Silverstone. And that's pretty much, I just wanted to voice my opinions on what I thought was good and worked, and mainly it's down to the cable management and the fact that you have got a lot of facility for installing a lot of drives, but I just think that they've skipped a few corners in other areas more than anything. So that's my take really on the Silverstone KL04. I can honestly say that I'm not a big fan of it. I have seen a lot of better cases on the market, especially for the same sort of money that this goes for. I won't mention any prices because we've got readership from all over the world, US, UK, Europe, Australia, and I'd be sitting here all day reading off prices in euros, pounds, dollars, Canadian dollars, Australian dollars. It's just not worth the time. So what I'd say is, if you are interested in this, go and have a look at your local retailer or e-tailer and see how much they're doing it for, and sort of have a look at the other options that are available to you from other brands, or even other ones from Silverstone, because Silverstone do make some really, really good cases. It's just a shame that, in my humble opinion, this isn't one of them. So that's all from me really. Until next time, when we will have another video review for you, maybe on a case, maybe on a motherboard, maybe on a graphics card, who knows, it depends what we get around to next. But until next time, this is Andy Rafael from eTechnics.com. Quite sadly, sitting next to the Silverstone KL04 because I was expecting a lot more from this case. But hopefully it can be redeemed with the next case we get from Silverstone. because we do know that they make some good cases. But until next time, I'm Andy Raffel from etechnics.com, and see you later.